As humanity, we've lived through all sorts of eras and ages that historians have given names to. But how do you think people in the future will call this era that we're living in right now? There's obviously a lot of cases that you could make for a lot of different names. But what I think is that we live in the information age. Today, when you think of what gives people power, it's not necessarily the case of the people with the bigger guns or the most land have the most power, like it used to in the past. I would argue that what matters most today is access to information. But regardless, information is exchanged today more than ever. And the wrong information in the hands of malicious or hostile people can cause incredible damage. And allowing wrong people to access the wrong data is not only damaging for companies, but it can be for you too. Try to think about what would be the thing that could damage you the most. Probably you're gonna think of allowing the wrong person to know the wrong things about you. The wrong numbers like bank account numbers. So you have all this information that could be potentially very damaging to you in the hands of the wrong people, yet you still probably enter all of those details on your computer all the time, just hoping that they don't end up in the wrong places. And there are more ways than you can imagine in which all of this can go terribly wrong for you. And preventing that from happening is what I want to talk about in this video. Step number 1, don't take the bait. Okay, so these tips and most things on this channel relate to computers. But did you know that most times when hackers try to hack people online, they're not actually trying to target computers, they're trying to target you. Cybercriminals often use various tricks to try to fool you into giving them your personal information. And this is called social engineering. When you're checking your email or visiting websites, make sure that you know and trust any links before you click on them. For example, if you just get an email that says click here, where the here is a hyperlink where you can't actually see the link where you're clicking, one way to make sure that the link that you're clicking is actually where you think you're going, to hover over it on your mouse to see the actual URL that the link is going to take you to. And another thing about URLs, make sure that the URL is actually the right URL where you want to go. One common hacking technique is to replace one letter or one number in a URL to make it look legit for people who don't properly check the URL. This sort of impersonation happens all the time, for example in the YouTube comment section. Luckily I haven't got these scammers in my comments yet, but this is a really big problem where most of the bigger YouTubers have these scammers impersonating them in the comments and messaging people from their audience saying that, oh, you won this and this giveaway or whatever. There's a great video about this by Marcus Brownlee, which I really recommend you watch on this topic if you want to learn more about it. But essentially, if you receive a message from a big YouTuber saying that you won something and it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Always check that the message is coming from the actual profile of the person who you think it's coming from. So stay safe. Number 2, be careful when using public Wi-Fi networks. You know, when you're having coffee at a coffee shop. Let's say you are at Best Barista Coffee and you want to connect to the internet to get some work done or finish some studying or whatever you want to do. You probably just search for the place's name on the Wi-Fi network, and if you see one that matches, you connect to it and you don't think much about it. But this could actually be a very bad idea, and let me tell you why. Just because the Wi-Fi network is called Best Barista Coffee doesn't actually mean that it's set up by Best Barista Coffee. Hackers are known to do this, to set up these fake hotspots and essentially just see everything that you do online. At least whenever you're connected to unsecured sites starting with HTTP and not HTTPS. That's a bit scary. So is the solution then to just never use a public Wi-Fi? Well, it doesn't have to be. One way to be more safe is to simply go to the counter of Best Barista Coffee and ask for them for the name of the actual Wi-Fi network that they have, as well as the password. That way you make sure that the Wi-Fi you connect to is actually the correct one. That is, of course, as long as you trust Best Barista Coffee, because of course they could just have set up a fake cafe, and this is a big theme in anything security related. There's always an element of trust. You just need to ask, who do you trust? Imagine if there's actually someone in the comments with a cafe called Best Barista Coffee. I'm sure your cakes are great. And that is why the only way to really be secure when you're in public Wi-Fi networks is to use a VPN. Okay, so you've probably heard about VPNs like everywhere, and it's one of those things that you probably still don't quite understand. You know, it's somehow related to security, but how does it actually work? Let me explain. Well, you can think of this as a tunnel. When you go on the internet, your data goes via this secure tunnel that no one else can see, and then it's encrypted at the VPN's end, and and only then is it sent to the server. So the receiving end doesn't actually see your IP address, and an IP address is essentially an identifier that tells the receiver who is browsing the website. This gives you a high level of online anonymity, provides you with added security, and allows you to access the entire internet without restrictions. And I do this myself all the time when I'm in public Wi-Fi networks. But it's absolutely essential that you choose a VPN that's trustworthy and reliable. And I could not think of a better example than the highest rated VPN out there, and today's video sponsor, NordVPN. So I started using NordVPN myself recently in a couple of use cases. First of them is, as we just talked about, when I'm in public networks and I don't want to have to think about whether the bald guy in the corner is actually tracking what I'm doing. And the second use case is when I'm trying to access geo-restricted content. So when you use NordVPN, you can actually choose the location of the VPN server. So for example, if you connect by the United States, from the website's point of view, it looks like you are accessing it from the United States and not your actual location. So for example, this allows me to access the much bigger US Netflix catalog. For example, just yesterday I was watching this Elon Musk documentary from the US Netflix, even though it isn't actually available in my local Netflix country. After you sign up, whenever you want to connect, all you have to do is click on one of these locations, and in one click and in a couple of seconds, you're now connected. You can use it on any device by just downloading the app. And another reason why I like NordVPN specifically is the speed. I've had no issues with the speed, and the speed tests online confirm that. So I've personally got a lot of value from using NordVPN. So if you want to sign up, make sure to go to nordvpn.com/internetencoder and use my code internetencoder at checkout to get up to 62% off a 2-year plan. That's nordvpn.com/internetencoder and use the code internetencoder at checkout. Thank you for NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Step number 4, actually create strong passwords. Now, this is something that you've probably been told a million times in like every website. Have at least one character, have at least one number. That's just annoying, right? So let me demonstrate to you why this is so important. So the first way hackers can try to guess your password is by not trying to guess at all, but instead by using a program like this one that I've coded up in literally 5 minutes to essentially just try to guess every single possible combination. And these are called brute force attacks. So let's say you have a password 4 digits, so 4 numbers. How long do you think it's going to take my program that I coded in 5 minutes to simply run through all the 10,000 possible combinations? Barely 1 second. But now let's say our password is a bit more complicated. Instead of 4 digits, we have 6 digits. How long would that take? We run, and as you can see, it's running, but it's already taking significantly longer. But now it took around 6 seconds on this M1 Max MacBook Pro. But you can see that just by adding 2 more digits, he increased it from 1 second to 6 seconds. So a 6-fold increase just by adding 2 digits. What else can we do to increase our security further? Well, instead of having digits, so that's 10 possibilities for every location, we could have letters as well, and we could have special characters, which adds the number of possibilities in each slot from 10 to 94. And I've coded this in another program. So let's say we have 4 characters, letters, numbers, and special characters. Let's see how long this would take. And it starts running, and it keeps running. You can see that it takes significantly longer. And in fact, you can calculate it. You take 94 times 94 times 94 times 94, however many times, to guess all the possibilities. 94 times 94 times, that's over 7 million possibilities. Now let's say for 8 possibilities. We're definitely not going to wait for this to finish, but actually the number of possibilities that you're going to have to check is over 9 quadrillion, which even for powerful computers could take hundreds or thousands of years to crack via a brute force attack. So as you can see, if our passwords are long enough and they contain a combination of numbers, letters, uppercase letters, and special characters, they actually become very infeasible to crack by brute force attacks. So that is why you want to use a strong password. Because most websites nowadays do actually require you to have a strong password, what hackers also do is they use these common word lists, where they just try every single one of the most common passwords and the most common targets for passwords to hopefully narrow down the search and guess yours. So guess what is the most common password in the world? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And guess, for example, what is the 4th most common password in the world? Password. You might laugh that people actually use these passwords, but they're still the most common ones out there. So as a hacker, obviously you're going to target these ones first. And if you just heard one of your passwords, you're probably not laughing, but you should probably change them. Some other examples are like lyrics of popular songs or famous athletes' names. These are all words that a lot of people just use as their passwords, but they're very easy targets for hackers. Don't use them. And again, as with anything security, there's always this trade-off of convenience against security. A good way to create great passwords is to just take your keyboard and do this and make your passwords like that. But those are probably very hard to remember, right? So how do you solve this? Well, a really great way to do that is to actually use a password manager. And our sponsor NordVPN actually happens to offer their own one. So when you sign up on NordVPN, you can also check their password manager NordPass if you're interested. What these password managers do is they automatically create for you these secure passwords and then just store them for you and autofill them as well. So you don't have to worry about remembering any passwords, and you can always know that you have a great passwords. And so step number 5 is to realize that complete anonymity is actually not even that desirable for most people. The steps that I've talked about so far are all things that we all can and probably should be implementing to increase our security online. This is obviously nowhere near all the things that you could be doing. If you really wanted to make sure no one can ever get to you, you'd be thinking about burner phones and not using any of your personal information anywhere to make sure that absolutely no one can ever know anything about you, or like not opening your computer at your home, because there is actually a way for governments, for example, to just track where you are based on where you use your device and stuff like that. But you realize that things like that start to get into pretty insane territory where the reward of this sort of anonymity, just for anonymity's sake, is probably not even worth it, unless you're a cyber criminal or something. And if you're a cyber criminal, that's bad. Don't be a criminal. I could choose to have complete anonymity where Facebook knows nothing about me by just never having a Facebook account. I could choose to allow Google to not know my location by just never using Google Maps or their services. So again, it brings me back to my point. With security, there's always a trade-off between convenience and security. If you want complete security where no one ever knows anything about you, just never use the internet. Just never enter any of your information anywhere and never use a computer. That way you can know that there is no information about you online. You have the option, but is it useful? Unless you're a criminal, probably not. When you're online, there's always an element of trust. Who do you trust to know stuff about you, and what do you trust them to know about you? You can never know for sure that you're giving only the right people, only the right information. Other than not using the internet at all, there is no such thing as absolute security. But by implementing the steps in this video, you can get one step closer. Thank you for watching. Thank you for NordVPN. I'll see you next time.